Welcome back to Bloody Elbow. Today, I am joined by Robert Valentin, who returns at UFC 318 on July 19th to take on Ateba Gautier. Before we get into this next fight, I want to briefly touch on the last one against Torrez Finney. I've read through a bunch of your social media posts about kind of reflecting on that loss and things like that. Now that it's been a little bit of time, have your feelings at all changed on it?
Oh, my feelings remain the same about it. I mean, it was a bad fight, and there's nothing else to say. No excuses. No. Yeah, Good fight.
There was a lot, like the main talking point coming out of it. There was a lot of criticism about Torres and his performance. Do you
Yeah.
think, how much of that do you think was justified? I know there was a lot of pressure on him anyway because he hadn't exactly won a ton of people over in the past with his performances. So that was already kind of a narrative going in, I think. So it was always going to be a big talking point, but it was
Mm.
certainly like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I mainly focused after the fight on myself to reflect on myself what I could have done differently. About him, I don't know what was his mindset going into this fight, but just from my perspective, if I go through what he went through on the Contender Series, I want to make a statement in the first fight, and I want to show that I can actually fight and scrap, and that I'm not afraid to step forward. Um, Obviously, he prioritized the winning of the fight, which is obviously also a way to approach the fight. But what I'm always saying is we're in the entertainment business, and you can win fights, but if you don't win fans, then you're gonna have a hard time in the sport. So I don't really know what was his mindset, or if he just shut down when he stepped into the octagon, or just went back to like autopilot. I don't know. But that's something that he has to work on for himself. For me, the important things is what I can take away from this fight, what I can do different next time, and what I have to learn from this experience.
Did you expect like I don't know if I guess more aggressive would be the right term because I think a lot of people felt the same way that you did in terms of expected him to try and maybe make a statement because the reason he had to fight on Contender Series multiple times was because he did basically what he did in the fight against you and won the fight, but didn't ever look like he was trying to finish it. So I expected that to be kind of the main goal. And like you said, maybe that was his goal and it just didn't happen for him or something like that. But when you're watching footage of him and you know that he has that tendency, are you expecting him to come and try and push a little bit
So
more than maybe in the past?
the thing is, so when he fought on the Contender Series, the Australian kid, what was his name again? I forgot. He fought an Australian guy that trained with my wrestling coach Frank Hickman, right? And we analyzed that fight over and over again because it was a similar matchup frame
Mm-hmm.
wise. And in that fight, he actually exchanged in the stand up. So he threw his overhands, and he started to go in there and jab and hook and whatever. So we were preparing big. I have to just say that big part of my preparation was to shut down his overhand right. And we were like, oh, he's gonna come and try to knock me out because that's what he's got to do now, to show Dana, hey, I'm not just a wrestler. I can throw. And so we were obviously aware of his wrestling, but in the preparation, watching that fight with the Australian kid on the Contender Series, we were like, oh, this guy can actually throw, and he will throw. And yeah, in the end, we had to realize that that wasn't the case in that night. So very unfortunate, because I think actually, like, even having his body frame, against a body frame like mine, if it comes to striking, is super entertaining, you know, like a small, big guy who throws with power, and then a long, lanky guy who's like funky, you know, that's all you need for a good matchup, you know. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So yeah,
I
yeah,
suppose the positive outcome of that is that this next matchup at UFC 318, Ateba Gautier, it seems like it couldn't be more the opposite, right? This fight
yes,
is one of those. Whilst I might have been expecting a slightly different approach from Torrez Finney in that fight, I don't think it's crazy to say that I can probably predict what how Gautier is going to approach this fight. Is that how you see it as well?
yeah, obviously. I mean, I was due for the UFC to give me a
Yeah.
striker, and that was kind of the message also they gave me, like, hey, Rob, look, um, bad start, but whatever. Next one's going to be striker, and eh, for me, it's just a completely different camp. Like preparing for a wrestler as a guy with my history of having hard times fighting wrestlers, the camp is just, yeah, a lot of pressure and it sucks, you know. And now we finally get to fight a striker, and we're gonna go in there toe to toe and throw and do what the people tune in to watch, you know. And that's just a big relief for me, and also um, puts a lot more excitement into my fight camp and into the preparation. So going into that fight, and when I got the matchup, I was really, really excited.
I think it almost feels and agree with me if you think I'm fair with this. It almost feels like an opportunity to reintroduce yourself because I'm sure people who watch The Ultimate Fighter are familiar with your style and how exciting it can be. And then, like you said, these fights against a couple of grapplers now in a row. But the difference between the amount of people who would have tuned in for The Ultimate Fighter versus tuning in for UFC 318 will be massive. So it almost feels like a restart in a way. Is that how you're approaching it?
Yeah, definitely. I think, but also kind of um, a continued effort
Mm-hmm.
to introduce me to the fans. Like I think, to be honest, the matchup with Torres Finney um, was an opportunity from the UFC to give me uh, also an exciting fight just because of his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was known because of the Contender Series, and now they're like, okay, we're gonna throw you in with Ateba Gautier, who's a striker and also has some hype behind his name, and I guess many people will tune in to watch that fight. So I feel like I'm getting these opportunities. Um, it's a sign of showing that they have a thought, a belief in me that I can give the fans what they want and can be a household name in the company, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned Gautier and his style. It immediately when he came through the Contender Series and stuff, it was clear that the UFC were going to get behind this guy because he's an exciting striker, very powerful. And I believe Dana, when he announced that he was going to be getting a contract, spoke about this raw talent, and if he could, you know, kind of refine that a little bit, he could turn into something special. When you look at his skill set and kind of break him down, is it a similar viewpoint in that maybe he's a little bit early in his journey for some of the guys that are in the UFC kind of around him? Or how do you break down his style and his career so far?
It's a very good question because it's very hard to break it down just because studying him um, is very difficult because he never faced a tough competition. So you can see how he's fighting when he's fighting, like, I would say, lower tier competition. And you don't know uh, how is a fighter's, yeah, habits, and how he really scraps when the fight gets ugly, and when it not goes your way. And so it made it really difficult for us to make a lot of reads on him.
Mm.
Definitely what you have to take away is his athleticism. his power and yeah, what you say, like his raw talent, just because of what his physicality offers and his striking, but it was really hard to make more reads on him, just because if you go through his record, I mean, he's now 7-1, and before the Contender Series, basically all of his opponents had a negative record. The guy he fought on a Contender Series, I know him actually, not very high level. And then his last opponent, um, yeah, I mean, you can make of the fight what you want, but it's not a competitive fight. So I think in terms of that, he definitely lacks some experience. But yeah, obviously he has what it needs to be in the UFC. Otherwise, Dana would not sign him. And I think it's a really good matchup, time frame wise, to now throw in him with me, um, on my behalf, to like you said, reintroduce myself to the crowd, and also show that I can hang with these kind of guys, and for him, same thing, show that he can hang with the higher competition. So yeah, really good matchup.
I think we got to see a little bit of kind of the way that you break down fights and stuff like that during your time on Tough, where you kind of doubled up as a coach and competitor, which I don't remember seeing before. So that was super cool. I want to get your thoughts on some big fights, starting with the main event of the card that you're going to be fighting on, Dustin Poirier's retirement fight, the trilogy with Max Holloway, and one of those matchups that just screams fight of the night from the moment you see it written down. But
Yeah.
there have been some questions as well that I think need answering in terms of where Dustin's at going into a fight, knowing that it's going to be his last one. Max, I watched a clip of him earlier today speaking about how he doesn't have a very good track record when it comes to trilogies. So there's that
Yeah.
hanging over it for him. How do you see that one going down?
So it's a very tough one to predict, right? We have on one side, Max Holloway, who's probably, um, one of the UFC future Hall of Famers, and one of the biggest names right now in the company, kind of this generation. Also, same like Poirier, who's now who are now, step by step leaving the company, right? That they done, and he's been in the UFC now for what, 15 years? I don't know. It's a long time. And the amount of experience he brings into that fight with Dustin Poirier, who's on the other side, like you said, his last fight, you don't really know how much fire he's going to bring there. Obviously, Louisiana, his home, he doesn't want to let down his fans, but I think for Max Holloway, there's still possibility to make another title run, and go for another sprint. So I think he's going to bring a different energy to the fight than Dustin Poirier, and also his striking. He's just more crisp than Dustin Poirier, and I think this is going to make the difference in that fight. Um, Hand speed, foot movement, and counter striking. So for this one, I'm going with Max Holloway. I'm also a little bit biased. I'm a huge Holloway fan for many years, as many other UFC fans, I think. But for this one, I'm going with Holloway with a stoppage.
We've got some huge matchups taking place as well in your division, in the middleweight division, over the next month or so. So before we get to the title fight, I want to get your thoughts on Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder, which is right up there for me with the fights I'm looking forward to the most that are currently on the schedule. I think that is,
Yeah.
as a long-time fan of RDR, to see him get to share the cage with Whittaker is something I probably thought would never happen, and I'm so excited that we're getting to it.
Yeah. So quickly to this topic. So me and Rainier, we were training together for since 2020. And I've been traveling to Netherlands a lot to train with him. And at this time when he was still in one championship, he was already talking about, I want to make that move to the UFC. I want to fight the best in the world. And he was unknown to many fans just because one championship never made a big effort to promote him. And I knew that this guy um, can be a champion and can give many great fighters in the UFC a hard time just because of his style. It's a on one hand an awkward style, but what we learned throughout the years now is MMA can be ugly but still very effective. And he's not an entertaining striker. Like he has many holes in the striking game, but the thing with RDR is his mind is so strong, his will to compete and to win. This guy is super, super tough, super tough. And his ground skills are, in my opinion, unmatched in the UFC. And I make this call right now. I think even against Khamzat Chimaev, he would win the grappling exchanges. Maybe not the majority of the wrestling exchanges, but the grappling exchanges. And I think that's gonna make again the difference in the Whittaker fight. Obviously, he needs to be super careful. Whittaker, I think, the fastest striker in the middleweight division. The way how he blitzes his opponents, moves in and out, throws his kicks, um, unmatched in the middleweight division. But at one point, they're gonna be so close that Reinier is gonna get a hold of him and gonna take him down and strangle him. And I think we can also take away from the Khamzat fight, and Rainier will do that as well, and see kind of the holes in the game of Whittaker when it comes to defending the choke and the grappling. And he's just so good on the ground that I think he will get this win and move on to become a title contender. And then main main objective for him will be to face Khamzat, because that's just uh, promotional wise, and value entertainment wise, the biggest fight you could do at this point in the middleweight division.
Yeah, I think that is very true, and even if it ends up being Reinier versus Dricus, I think is fascinating, right? Both guys that don't necessarily have the most clean styles, but like
Yeah.
you said, have proven to be incredibly effective, even when, some people from eye test might think, oh, well, this guy isn't very good at this or that, but the results, they just keep getting them. You mentioned Chimaev
Yes.
already. Do you see him coming out on top against Strekus when they meet?
So I don't really want to make a big prediction for this one. I just want to say this. The UFC fans right now, they are demanding new big names, new champions that are entertaining. And not saying that Dricus is not that guy, but he's definitely a character. But just in like I said, this old generation of champions and big names is fading, right? And the fans, you can feel this energy in the UFC right now, right? They kind of miss something, or they want like these super exciting names, and Hamzat can be that guy in the middleweight division. And if he takes that belt, it's gonna shake up the whole UFC, and the fights to make after that are just huge. And it's going to be a very tough one, but I hope and I think Hamzat is going to end up on top and takes the belt. And then I think that then the new generation of the UFC is going to get rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And it has been a pleasure picking your brain, my friend. I really appreciate that. Good luck for UFC 318, of course. I hope to catch you sometime soon. But until then, all the best, mate. And yeah, appreciate your time.